Breaking tonight in the wake of brutal beheadings, crucifixions, and targeted terror attacks in Paris and Canada, among other places, the commander-in-chief blames the media for overstating America's terror concerns and says the trajectory of the planet is one toward less violence. Good evening and welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. President Obama sat down with the internet-based news outlet Vox late last month and seemed to suggest that people's fears about terror are the product of a sensationalized news cycle.
The trajectory of this planet overall is one towards less violence, more tolerance, less strife, less poverty.
Do you think the media sometimes overstates the sort of level of alarm people should have about terrorism and this kind of chaos as opposed to a longer-term problem of climate change and epidemic disease?
Absolutely. And, you know, I don't blame the media for that. You know, what's the famous saying about local newscasts, right? If it bleeds, it leads, right? You show crime stories and you show fires, because that's what folks watch. It's all.
Well, that message apparently in conflict with the warnings of several four-star generals, intelligence directors, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and the former defense secretary, all of whom have recently warned of a threat that seems very real and very grave.
We are facing a form of a cancerous component of the Islamic religion, which has a fanaticism to it that has everything which is against our way of life, and they, in fact, have declared war on us.
The United States is confronting emerging security challenges on a scale not seen since the rise of the Soviet Union to superpower status following World War II.
They're beyond just a terrorist group. Oh, this is beyond anything that we've seen. So we must prepare for everything.
Because of open borders and immigration issues, it's an immediate threat.
Chief White House correspondent Ed Henry is live in Washington tonight at the White House. Ed?
Megyn, good to see you. The bottom line is the president had a joint news conference with the German Chancellor Angela Merkel today, and they discussed some of those threats all around the world that you were just referring to, from Ukraine to Iran. But the president barely mentioned ISIS, and that comes after Friday's speech where his national security advisor Susan Rice said that we can't give in to alarmism about these terror threats. The president's Thursday National Prayer Breakfast speech, where he talked about Christians doing terrible deeds over the years, appearing to downplay these terror threats. Listen to another part of the Vox.com interview where he compared his job to a big city mayor battling small crime.
It is entirely legitimate for the American people to be deeply concerned when you've got a bunch of violent, vicious zealots who behead people or randomly shoot a bunch of folks in a deli in Paris. And we devote enormous resources to that, and it is right and appropriate for us to be vigilant and aggressive in trying to deal with that. The same way that a big city mayor's got to cut the crime rate down if he wants that city to thrive.
That part about a random shooting, remember what he left out is that deli in Paris was a kosher deli specifically targeted because it was in a Jewish neighborhood. Megyn?
Ed, thank you. Here now to react, Colonel Oliver North, a Fox News military analyst. Colonel, let's start with that. You've got a bunch of vicious zealots who behead people or randomly shoot a bunch of folks in a deli in Paris. The thing is, it wasn't random at all.
No, not at all. And of course, it was targeted specifically because they were Jewish, and the person who did it acknowledged that on a video that he was preparing while he was doing it.
Is that downplaying? I mean, because that's what he's being criticized for here, for downplaying what happened in Paris, for downplaying the national threat, for downplaying it by saying the media is hyping it.
Well, we've got the Secretary of State saying that we're on the road to defeating ISIS. If we are on the road to defeating ISIS, we're walking very slowly uphill into the wind in the median strip because we're not doing diddly. 6 months ago, the CIA estimated the number of ISIS fighters to be between 20,000 and 31,500. Now think about how poor our intelligence has to be for an estimate to vary by more than a third. By the way, the number now is over 50,000. Last month, the State Department said that more than 18,000 fighters, foreign fighters, have traveled to Syria and Iraq. Now that's over 20,000. And when you look at these kinds of things, and then the head of state in Iraq, the prime minister of Iraq, saying that it's Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, says the coalition isn't doing enough.
He wants more, but let me challenge you with this, because Secretary Kerry came out and suggested that we've made real progress in Iraq. I'm looking for his exact quote. I had it in front of me. He says the coalition has regained more than 20% of the territory that had been under ISIS's control and killed a significant proportion, he says, of its top leadership.
Little reality check for Mr. Kerry and the rest of the so-called O-team. ISIS still controls almost all of Anbar province, from Baghdad west to the Syrian border. The Iraqi plan, the plan for Iraq first, is on hold. The whole idea that ISIS is going to be defeated in Mosul is on hold. The Obama administration is doing nothing to give assurances to members of the coalition that their Iraq first plan is going to work. And nobody believes Bashar al-Assad is going to be removed from power in Damascus. So all of this says, particularly given the opportunity that was there last week with the King of Jordan willing to equip and train the Peshmerga if the United States would provide ammo and arms, none of that has happened. And yes, the UAE has rejoined the coalition, Megyn, but Jordan is already flying more than 20% of the missions over Iraq and Syria, and now they've got 57 combat-configured aircraft compared to the Saudis, who have over 230. How comes Jordan is carrying the bulk of the load?
But do you think the president means to understate the threat we face, or is it just his job to sort of tamp down fears, say, we got this, you know, we're on this, go about your lives and don't worry?
Megyn, the scary part of it is he actually believes what he's saying. Listen. The transition in the Saudi monarchy, the collapse in Yemen, the disaster in Libya, the ISIS engagement now with Boko Haram, al-Shabaab, Abu Sayyaf in the Philippines, and now Afghanistan shows that ISIS today has a global reach. They're not smaller, they're bigger. And what we ought to be doing right now, the Marines have a wonderful saying, nothing says sincerity like a carrier strike group and a U.S. Marine Air Ground Task Force.
Oh, it's wordy, but I see it's catchy.
Well, I'm just saying that if they deployed 2 of them right now to the Mediterranean, take out Assad's Russian supplied anti-aircraft capability, they would have a salutary effect not only on what's happening inside Iraq and Syria, it would also have a positive effect on Putin in Ukraine and Erdogan in Turkey.
Colonel Oliver North, thanks for being here, sir.
Anytime.
Joining me now.